Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Červená Barva Press reading series. And I'm so excited to have the readers here tonight. And we also have another reading tomorrow, so I hope you will join us. And so let's get started. Our first reader is Meg Kearney. She's the author of All Morning the Crows, winner of the Washington Prize for Poetry, was published by the Word Works in 2021. Meg is also author of An Unkindness of Ravens and Home by Now, winner of the Penn New England L.L. Winship Award, a Heroic Crown chapbook, The Ice Storm, 3 verse novels for teens, and an award-winning picture book, Trooper, illustrated by E.B. Lewis. She directs the Solstice MFA program at LaSalle University in Massachusetts. And I give you Meg.
Thank you so much, Gloria. Thanks for running this terrific reading series, and congrats on all you've accomplished with your wonderful press. And what a thrill. I'm so happy to read with Kat and Dawn. 2 wonderful writers I consider to be my friends. So, and thank you all for being here. So I thought I would read kind of a winter holiday always bird theme tonight as we approach December. And I'm going to start off by reading an older poem from my first book, An Unkindness of Ravens. Haven't read this in ages, but given the theme, and it's sometimes fun to go back to the older work that you don't read so much anymore. So growing up on our Christmas tree, we had an angel in the place where people might put a star. And she always looked a bit drunk, which is good to know for this poem. And unkindness of ravens is a collective term for a flock of ravens. And I just want to read you quickly the James Lipton quote from his book, An Exaltation of Larks, to let you know where that term, an unkindness of ravens, comes from the legend that ravens pushed their young from the nest to be nourished with dew from heaven, as the folklore of British birds put it in 1885, until the adult birds saw what color they would be. And this is called Martini Angel. Martini Angel. Raven is perched on my Christmas tree, where Angel used to sit, sipping martinis on the sly. We called her the Martini Angel, though she kept her gin hidden with the rest of the liquor in the house. She always tilted to one side like a caroler on a binge, her flustered white hair a constant surprise. Lit from within, her familiar face blinked unpredictably. Look, the adults would laugh, swirling ice in their glasses. Angel's been in it again. But Angel's had one Christmas too many. I imagine she's out dancing at some nightclub with the shepherd boy who leaned against the manger door on account of his missing leg. Or she's flown off with Melchior, the gold-bearing king, who's keeping her in gin and cocktail onions skewered on those tiny plastic swords. I console myself, at least Raven is a sober substitute. But I'm no angel, he reminds me, swaying back and forth on the treetop, singing Rockabye Baby. Raven nudges my hand-painted birds, watches with glee as they drop to the floor, crack like his voice, Oh, the legacy of 1,000 mothers, he cries, as I sit on the floor, turning blue with all the other babies. So a little bit of a twisted Christmas poem. And then I'm going to read from the latest book, All Morning the Crows. And in this book, each of the poems is the title of a different bird. And I will start with Warbler. Many of these are set in the White Mountains of New Hampshire, such as this one. Warbler. By early winter, the warbler is gone, but its song lingers the way a hike up Cannon Mountain lingers in the knees, or the smell of smoke hovers in the cabin on foggy mornings, embers cool and damp even, like the newspaper and her books. She should have headed south by now, too, soon, when she runs out of wood. Scrounging for kindling at the forest's edge, sitting wrapped in a blanket where sun hits the porch. She hears that bird at the oddest times. Please, please, pleased to meet you. This afternoon, as she's headed to the spring with her jug. The dog doesn't seem to notice, for here is the path blazed by deer to where they drink. Maybe the dog's company isn't enough. She's hearing things. Or, like her, one bird has stayed past all warnings. There it is again. From the porch, she can't see the mountains. It's snowing in the notch. We should go now, she tells the dog. Black as the top of Cannon is white. He settles on the hearth rug. She crisscrosses sticks over crumpled paper, finds matches in the little blue cupboard. Okay. Here's something a little different. This is penguins. This is a pantoum. Penguins. They looked like little children standing upright on the shore, the sailors said, still at sea. All were hungry under that frozen sun. Standing upright on the shore, a cluster of fathers and their chicks. All were hungry under that frozen sun, waiting for the mother penguin's return. The cluster of fathers and their chicks didn't see the sailors land. Waiting for the mother penguin's return, they'd survived brutal nights, furious blizzards. They didn't see the sailors land, axes, knives, and clubs in hand. They'd survived brutal nights, furious blizzards, the stunning tales of killer whales. Axes, knives, and clubs in hand, the sailors made quick work of slaughter. The stunning tales of killer whales, wolves' teeth, nothing had ever slain so many. The sailors made quick work of slaughter. How many dead penguins could a ship hold? Wolves, whales, nothing had ever slain so many. What haunts sailors' dreams? Penguins huddled on shore. How many dead penguins can a ship hold? The sailors said back at sea. What haunts sailors' dreams. Huddled on shore, penguins look like little children. Okay, starlings. I'll tell you that in wintertime, starlings have a speckled or a starry plumage, and a flock of starlings is called a murmuration. So, starlings. All the starlings I have known are dead. Summers, I'd scrape them off the schoolhouse lawn, their nests on the edge of a slate blue roof. Babies featherless, heads too heavy, breathing shallow as promises of drunks. I've known a few of them too, heads dipping and rising before the final plunk. There's only so much you can do, which by age 7 or 8, I knew about drunks. But baby birds I thought might be saved with an eyedropper filled with milk, some mushed up worms. What I wanted to shove down their throats was song, echo of their parents' cartoon chirps, their imitation coughs of crows that peppered the schoolyard willow. Damn, starlings will mimic anything. Drunkards bellow, 18th century allegretto. Mozart once bought a pet starling when it whistled his G major concerto. He was flattered, I'm sure, though maybe he too, like me, thought a song could save a thing, could save a starling anyhow. I buried those babies on the school's vast grounds, marked the place with stones. Winters, I would visit there while my mother drank alone. Quiet, I'd tell the babies' ghosts as their murmuration rose, far above the schoolhouse roof, their belly full of stars. Thanks. Okay. 3 more. So this is Wren. I'll mention St. Stephen's Day, and I'll mention mummers who were actors. And in Celtic communities, they celebrate St. Stephen's Day on December 26th. St. Stephen was said to be in hiding from his enemies, and a wren gave away his location, and then he was stoned to death. So on St. Stephen's Day, these mummers go, they're kind of like mimes. They go house to house with, it used to be a dead, real dead raven, or wren rather. But today they might use like a stuffed wren, a fake wren. So, wren. It's a winter wren, mouse-like and secretive, that's made a home in the pocket of my old canvas coat. Hanging on a nail inside the tool shed, that coat's kept a couple of generations dry. Why not another? Besides, the bird's nest solves a mystery. I'd thought I'd heard a song sparrow, that hard 2-syllable kimp kimp call, but I couldn't place those high tinkling warbles tucked deep in the ferns and thick underbrush beyond the weeping willow. Once I thought I'd heard God calling from there. That turned out to be an uncommon bird too. At least it didn't appear in any guide. One book says it's not uncommon to find a house wren nesting in your coat pocket. A winter wren is favored by mummers, those straw boys of Dingle playing penny whistles through their motley masks, begging a tuppence to bury the bird on St. Stephen's Day. Why did the Irish martyr a wren to honor St. Stephen? You'll have to ask them. William Blake warned against it, but they aren't about to allow some Englishman mar a custom, even if he was a great poet. Which brings me back to this wren in my pocket. Its name might come from the Swedish vrensk, uncastrated, or the Anglo-Saxon wren lascivious. Prostitutes were once called wrens, another reason why I'll leave this nest alone, not feeling righteous enough to cast the first stone. Thank you. Okay. Some more birds I see often out at my winter feeder, juncos. Juncos. I can't pour this bird seed from cup to feeder without seeing my mother pour a scotch. I can't. After they cut out her lung, I said, I'll call you every day. She said, did you call and then hang up? Don't bother, my brother said. She never remembers. Now I'm standing on the back deck of the house in New Hampshire, a cup of birdseed in my hands. Now I'm standing on the roof of my old building on East 20th Street, watching the towers fall. Now I'm sneaking into my childhood home in LaGrange, thinking of juncos, their gray white bodies like a building smoldering. Birdseed turns golden, poured into morning air. Birdseed is not whiskey, but birdseed, it's in your hair, my mother said, reaching for me. Thanks, everyone. I'm going to end with Duckling Swan. And I think everyone knows the fairy tale about the ugly duckling. Duckling Swan. And again, thanks to Gloria, and really looking forward to hearing Dawn and Kat. Before I was born, I was biggest of the clutch, already a burden and slow to hatch. When at last I smashed my way into this world, my mother's tongue unfurled a hiss. Siblings snickered and jeered. Who could love an ugly girl smothered in egg wax, gray as the curl in a drowned man's lip? Even cleaned up, my down was ash. I was the art of my mother's mistake, the ache in her dinosaur heart. I was the winter, the ice over early, no fish in the pond, and the hunter's sure shot. I had nowhere to go when they drove me out. I went like something dead in Coyote's mouth, like something a cat mauled, then tossed about. I starved through the full moons, slept in the snow. But by spring, a lake was aglow with my gleaming. In spring, I returned and blinded them all. Thanks again, everyone. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Meg. That was wonderful. And our next reader is Catherine Parnell. She's the editor, teacher, and co-founder of MicroLit, Almanac, and Birch Bark Editing. Her publications include the memoir, The Kingdom of His Will, as well as stories, essays, and interviews in Cult, Orca, Grande Dame, West Trade Review, Tenderly, Cleaver, Free State Review, Barnhouse, and many other journals. And I give you Kat.
Oh, thank you, Gloria. And that long list of publications, I highly recommend all of them to anyone who is considering submitting their work. Meg, that was a fabulous reading. I swoon when I hear your poems. I really do. And Dawn, I'm looking forward to yours. I just want to take a moment here and applaud Gloria and her press for all that they've brought to all of us. So just throw your hands up in the air and say, yay, Gloria. Thanks so much, Gloria. Much appreciated. I'm going to read 3 very short pieces. I suppose they might be considered they're flash fiction for sure, although there is always a story behind the story. You can ask me about that later. As I said, they're very short. The first one is called Mud, and this one was a request. The family was not one for camping, but as things fell apart, the way they do with time, the father bought an oversized canvas tent, big enough for the 2 boys, 2 girls, and their mother. Sleeping bags, food in coolers and cans, clothes and cards, just the right number of teddy bears, flashlights, and an old Coleman stove went into the station wagon. And the kids snuffled in, and the father drove over the state line, as if by crossing a border, he might enter a new land. Adventure filled the air as the children sang songs and played I Spy, and the mother passed around snacks, and the father drove. When they got to the campsite by the side of the lake, they tumbled out of the car and on toward the water, shoes flying. Days of hiking and swimming, nights by a fire telling ghostly family stories, like the one about the old auntie whose intended died in the war to end all wars, and how she roamed the family homestead weeping, or the uncle who'd shot a bear that killed his prized dog, but not the story about the brother who wasn't with them, the one who went away. And by that fire, they hugged one another and tried to forget the scary things, but still, when they slept at night, cries could be heard, and the father's was the loudest of them all. And then one afternoon after swimming, it rained in a never-ending cascade, and the father grabbed the smallest girl and a bar of soap, and they stepped out into the clearing, and the rain came down. Not hard, but fat, gentle drops that felt like wet moonlight. And the father and his smallest girl, the girl who still remembered, who like him could be heard at night, they passed the bar of soap back and forth, and they lathered up, and the bubbles fell around them in silvery white foam that the mud ate. The soap slid over their skin like a prayer, and the girl lifted her eyes to her father, who held his arms out high like a thirsty tree. And she lifted her tawny arms high and felt something new and delicious. And perhaps it was God telling her something. What it was cannot be known, but for all her days, she thanked her father for the gift of knowing she could be washed clean, of knowing that she didn't have to always remember, that the earth would take back the dirt and something new would grow. And that when the memories came, the smallest sister could wash them in the dark and in the quiet, rinse away the blood and filth and send them on their way until the morning. Thank you. The second one is called Dice. Dice, like we all play with those. Dice. Down by the elbow, Billy's place was, up high in the rock. So high, it was a hardship to get from the dock to the cottage. All rock, gray granite with a stripe of pink quartz marbled by white. Wind-borne waves shuffled against the shore, blue-tailed skinks sunned in crevices. Dragonflies hovered and snapped at minuscule prey. We all of us live like that in the summer, perched on rocks, on our islands, out in the open waters. That afternoon, she came from the elbow to us. She pulled up in her whaler, and her dog Thora, wearing a pink life jacket that matched Billy's bikini, leaped out. Billy laughed like one of the loons around here. Thora jerked and jumped at the sound of it. Dumbass dog, we thought. The water rippled as Thora chased a water snake and Billy called out, "Let's swim." One hand held her waterproof bag with her smokes and boat license. The other, a liter bottle of Coke. Particular about that, she was. We dove in, swam to the point and back, sparkling hot, slept on the rock out front. But Billy shivered, and Thora scooched up to her. Brittle our Billy was, so we fed her, and between bites, she pulled on that Coke bottle like a baby at the breast. We had our suspicions. We played dice as dusk lumbered in. Roll 1,000 to get in the game. First to get 10,000 wins. Billy yanked her pink sweatshirt over her thin shoulders and right on down to her knobby knees. When her turn came, she ashed her smoke, lipped it on the saucer, and flung dice across the table again and again. We caught them. Wind gentled the screen, and the candles sputtered tiny black plumes. The stars came out. Billy rolled 5 aces. "Well, what do you know?" she said, a strangled confession. Her smoky regret stank up the room. We knew then. "Stay," we said. Mouthy she was in her no. So around 10, we shoved the whaler off our dock, gave her an extra flashlight, told her we'd pick her up the next day, do a picnic. But when we tied up at her dock, she wasn't there. No Thora either. Scoured her island, went about to the others we did. Later, word came to us. No one gets to stay, you know. No one. But we're here anyway, rolling the dice. Thank you. And the last story that I'll read, it's a little longer, and you'll know who it's dedicated to after I read it. But to tell you that now would spoil the story. It's called The Magus. We all did it. We rowed, paddled, sometimes took the tin boat, motored over to Frawley's Island, where we held steady in the deep lake waters in front of the cliff. We all did it, like those who came before us, those who will come after us. And sometimes the connection between us and them took us back to the place where we were all children of the dawn, taking that leap. Only we knew where the leap on high took us, deep into the blue bottle green waters where the cormorants and loons dove, where the oldest fish fed, where the sun's citrine light turned the rocks to ivory. When Blake and Jamie took the tin boat one night at fishing time, we knew where they were headed because they took towels and no fishing rods. Silly boys, as if they might fool us. We knew the pull. We still feel it. And so we imagined Jamie in the boat, the motor idling, as Blake dove off the side and swam to Frawley's Island, hoping, we know, that old man Frawley wouldn't see them. Childish, distant prayer that was. And to hear old man Frawley later tell it, for he watched and didn't take off after the boys, as was his way when trespassers touched any of his islands in the bay. It was a sight. Old Man Frawley held back. We'll give him that. Because Blake was special. He charmed his way through scrapes and scraps, even the time he smacked the doctor on the belly at the regatta party, smacked him hard on his fat belly and said, "So long, fatso." Blake, he always wound up with plasters and a scold. But the worry ran deep with all of us because we wanted no harm to come to him. He was our good luck charm, the boy who got us through when times were thin, which he did when sweet little, not a decade old Mary seized for 3 days in a row. Our Blake sat by her side as she wasted in our bay where she was born, and he slipped water between her lips, read her Kipling, sang ballads and bawdy songs to make her laugh. So her passing was light and clear, and our Blake was only 9. We knew he had a gift, a cross to carry, but not bear, because he did not know sorrow, not yet. Old Man Frawley watched as Blake climbed the cliff and gasped when the boy slipped at the ledge where the rattlesnakes are known to rest on sun-warmed rock. And the old man grabbed his binoculars for a better look. And what he saw was Blake at the summit, stepping sure and solid on the outcropping. Blake, he said, stood up straight and tall and yelled, "Watch me." And he pushed off the rock into the air. He held there like an osprey, smooth and motionless, then bent and jackknifed 30 feet down to the water and dove in, smooth as the slip of time. And as Old Man Frawley spoke it, we felt it, that draw to the deep where no sound other than the boil of your own blood percolates. The old man didn't mind saying his breath stopped, waiting for Blake to surface. Waiting and waiting, while his knuckles turned white, and the pain went to his throat, where words would not come, because our Blake seemed to be gone, taken by the gods of the Great Lake. Jamie stood in the boat. "No, Jamie," we cried, "never stand in a boat." But Jamie stood and peered into the water, where a slight ripple fluttered, then a great splash as Blake emerged, shaking like a dog after a stick, gulping bubbles and bleeding out his nose. But the miracle was what he had in his hands. Antlers, moose by the look of it. And how did he find one who knew to hold your breath for a very long time brings you one step closer to the divine? Old Man Frawley pulled up, puffed up with pride for our boy Blake, and those antlers took a place at the makeshift library on the clubhouse dock, right where the legends of the bay grew, where the old steamer docked once a week, and the sightseers gawked at the antler size. But we knew our Blake was magical. And when he came back some years later with his husband to nurse Old Man Frawley, who by then had the cancer, we judged nothing. For love is love is love. And Blake swam in the greens and blues of our bay, not asking us to watch him dive, but to dive with him. Thank you.
Thank
That's
you, Kat. That was incredible. Such wonderful stories. So our next reader is Dawn Potter, and her most recent book is the poetry collection Accidental Hymn, a finalist for the National Poetry Series. She has also won a Maine Literary Award in nonfiction. Her poems and essays appear in the Beloit Poetry Journal, the Sewanee Review, the Threepenny Review, the Times Literary Supplement, and many other journals. She directs the poetry and teaching programs at Frost Place and lives in Portland, Maine. And I give you Dawn.
Thank you so much. It's just such an honor to be here and to have just the deep pleasure of listening to Kat and Meg read. And thank you so much for creating this reading, Gloria. I'm going to start out by saying the wind is wild here and I'm hearing pieces of trees coming off outside the window. So if I suddenly go silent, I'll say goodbye now. I'm going to read from Accidental Hymn, which is as Gloria said, my most recent collection. And it spans the time between my two places in Maine. I lived for 25 years in a very small town in the central Maine County of Somerset County, a really small town. I homesteaded up there, raised my kids up there. It was a hard place to be, but it was also, it was my home. And so when we left it, I moved down south to Portland, Maine, I underwent just a terrible depression. And I'm not really a depressive person, but the grief was just really unbearable. And so these poems span trying to deal with the grief of loss of home. They deal also with the definition of home as a place or as a self or as a place you can't quite get into sometimes too. So I'm going to begin with a poem that's set up in my town of Harmony. La Terre Perdue, the lost country. Back in my country, we hardly knew what a sunset was. The trees were so dense, weighted with lichen and time. At evening, the shadows of the pines, the firs, the tamaracks would crowd the heavens, and on a summer night, the sky would sink into a blue so black. It was the wet ink of fountain pens. It was old work shirts forgotten in the rain. And now a lemony streak of light would finger each giant's shadow. And the day birds would cry out their last words, their last words. And now silence, and now the owl would begin to speak. The Maine woods. Don't imagine I was Thoreau. I had a driveway, though no one drove up it much. And I had a car and gasoline and a telephone that rang now and again, and lamps that often stayed lit, and a faucet that often spouted water. And most evenings, I had baseball on the radio. For a while, I had a dog, but then the dog died. On Friday nights, I even had a husband. Oh, I was not Thoreau, not even close, though I did have a vernal pool that was almost a pond, and a footpath twisting among ancient pines, and a creek chattering and singing among the stones. On the nights I had a husband, the kitchen hummed and the pillows sang, and a cat complained at the door. But on most nights, my shadow trembled in the gleam of a cloudy moon. Small predators yipped in the dark, and I could not find my face in the mirrors. Up and down the stairs I trudged, up and down the narrow treads. At dawn, I folded the shirts, I baked the bread, I washed the floors, and hung out the sheets. It was important to force time through a sieve. I avoided taking strong measures with myself. Tears were a practical solution, and I called on them 20 times a day. I was never joyful, not for a moment, but sometimes I was happy. I begged the windblown trees to sweep the sky. I coaxed the jays to scream their love. Loneliness was better than never coming home, and never coming home is the tale I'm about to tell. So the town of Harmony has about 700 people in it, and it's on the whole very poor. And it's not particularly beautiful. And I loved it deeply, but it's really hard to explain to other people why. But when you live in a place for so long, it becomes part of you, all its suffering as well. And I think that's one of the things that I was trying to reach into in this next poem, which is called Walking into Town. This road is empty for most of the day, but when the log trucks whip over the ridge, Jake braking, belching diesel, then watch out, dear. The soot-stained sky glowers, snow is on the way, snow is always on the way, and the tar is always buckled with potholes and frost heaves, and in the ditch today, old Mrs. Richards is hunting for Budweiser cans, for Mountain Dew bottles to trade down at the store for bologna to feed her grandson. He's 3, and he's smart, she tells me, he's 3, and his teeth are rotting out of his head. So I moved to Portland, and it's not a very big city, but compared to where I was, I've got neighbors up on 4 sides of me, right up against me. And I just spent the first year I was here basically hanging out the window every time I heard a noise. I thought like someone's coming up the driveway, but it's just, it's just the town. And so my writing changed because all of a sudden there were all these people in it. I just couldn't stop. And one group of people that I just couldn't stop paying attention to was delivery drivers. I just became obsessed with delivery drivers. And so this poem is a kind of ode to all the people that drive the trucks. It's called Barry. Maybe it's the hot summer, day after day. The air is thick and humid as a wet sock, but I've never seen a mailman walk slower. Barry leans back as he steps forward like that Bigfoot guy in the R. Crumb comics. Regulation shirt bagging over regulation shorts. His face blank as a brick, listening to who knows what through the headphones plugged firmly under his regulation hat. The UPS man, now, he favors Viking metal. You can hear it blasting through the wide open doors of the brown barge he bashes up and down the meek neighborhood streets. And the other mailman, the weekend one who looks like Thor in the days when he was still a 99-pound weakling, he doesn't listen to anything. He just mutters into his phone, I know, that's what I'm telling you, as he hands out the Amazon packages. The FedEx guy lugging boxes of cat treats onto my neighbor's porch. What he likes is football podcasts. From the tinny distance of his cockpit, I can hear an earnest young talker ponder the wretchedness of the New York Jets, then sigh lustily about her fantasy draft picks. But Barry, for all I know, it could be Puccini that's got him into such a state. He can hardly lift his eyes from his shoes. Maybe as he's stuffing our little box with bills and begging, some broken heart aria is dogging him step by step, block by block, every door locked, and the death of love searing his ears shut. So this poem, this cover of this book is a painting by a Sarasota, Florida artist named Kathy Wright, who I was matched up with for a project through a program called Art in Common Places, which basically puts together a writer and an artist, gives them a deadline, and they have to come up with a body of work. It was pretty stressful. We had 5 weeks to work. We had to come up with a theme, and then we had to work. And so our theme ended up being accidents and 14 lines. So the name of this painting is 14 lines. And so I wrote sonnets and she made paintings that all have a grid of 14 lines underneath them. I began writing these poems right before January 6th, 2021. So it was still pretty much high COVID. We were just coming up on the debacle in DC. It was a really stressful time. And my son was also living with us because of COVID, and the house was incredibly tight and incredibly loud. And so I ended up having to write these poems on a deadline in situations in which I normally never wrote. And yet, you know, I got something out of it. And so that's what I'm going to read to you is the last, to end this, are the 14 sonnets of the accident, in the accident sonnets, which basically tell the story of a period of time not too long ago that all of us lived through. 1. So we went shopping for skates because ponds are big and we can skate with our masks off and we can breathe the air without terror. And because the sound of blades slicing ice is the ring of steel against stone, of might against might, and because we are afraid of dying and so tired, so very, very tired. 2. The sign said, it said nothing could save us now nothing could save us. Satan has us in his clutches. Satan has us, the sign said, in his clutches. The man holding the sign stood at the corner. He stood holding a sign that said Satan, and the cars, they did not stop. 3. Behold these images of summer pasted into the catalog I found stuck to the bottom of the recycling bin. I flipped through the stained pages, but cannot recall what it feels like to be bare-armed and warm, smiling at strangers clustered on a dock at sunset, chattering about dogs and children, laughing into the eyes of a beautiful man, brushing sand from his feet, cupping his unmarked face. 4. I tried on a new linen shirt and then spilled tea on it. I put on my old clogs and staggered down the stairs. I stuffed work pants into the washing machine, but forgot to hang them up. I boiled 6 eggs and they cracked. I let the cat in and I let the cat out. 3 seagulls circled above me. Their wings cut the sky like harrows. It's one of those days when everything is tinged with blue. 5. I thought for a change I would write a happy poem, and look, here I am writing about the conversation I just had with my son. We were talking about the cat, and we were using our special funny talk like the cat voices, which is a thing we do in this family. We are very committed to comic relief, and it was sweet because for like 5 minutes, we forgot to be scared. 6. I've been reading such hard books lately, Proust and Byron. It's like eating nothing but brown rice and kale. And finally, today I said the hell with it and lay on a couch under a blanket and read about Lord Peter Wimsey being judgy about claret while stalking a murderer. And for some reason, this was better, but why? 7. It's Saturday morning in early January in Maine, and the faraway sun is grinning behind a scrim of cloud, and I should be outside to say hello, and I meant to be outside by now, but somehow I am still sitting here on the couch, doom scrolling the news, because I've realized that half the insurrectionists look like my middle-aged cousins, and the other half look like my ex-students, like the kids my own kids went to school with. What's the right thing to do with recognition software that lives inside my own life? I am a crime. 8. In my son's room, which used to be my study until COVID made him move back in with his parents, music is trickling from beneath the door, something sad and twangy, and I'm lying on my bed trying to write poems because I don't have a room of my own anymore, don't even have a desk, don't even have a chair. And as I lie here on this mattress on the floor and watch a no-sun afternoon grimace through the window, my son is lying on his mattress on his floor and trying to write a statement about why he wants to go to divinity school. And I'm thinking, why don't we have any real beds? And his music sighs under my door like every hard answer. 9. I'm not looking out the window, but I can hear the street, the neighbor kids shrieking at each other, and now their boots pounding up and down the sidewalk. They're shooting Nerf arrows at each other again, or playing some inscrutable game involving a hula hoop and a character they call Mr. Orange, and before long somebody's going to be crying, and I bet that will be me. 10. 7 years ago, I lived in the woods, and 7 months ago, I was amazed by a white peony in my city garden, and 7 weeks ago, I almost caught the house on fire as I was roasting a turkey, and 7 days ago, I witnessed a semi-failed putsch in the capital of my woebegone nation, and 7 hours ago, I was lying on the floor trying to recover from an abs class, and 7 minutes ago, I had not yet written this poem, and 7 seconds ago, I thought this poem was bad, and when I was 7, I climbed into the notch of a maple tree and wondered who on this earth could I possibly be. 11. Saturday morning, and it's pouring rain in Maine where it's not supposed to rain in January. And I'm sitting in a corner of my couch, squinching my mind away from bad news, trying to pretend that today will be super relaxing, so calm and productive, and probably I'll look younger also. Meanwhile, the clock ticks and the furnace hums and the washing machine sloshes and the 21st century slips and slides along its dented rails. And you, what are you doing right now? Are you gazing through a window pane into the sodden dark? Are you yearning over the strangeness of love? 12. I've been dreaming lately. Dreaming about birds, about watching birds scattered like spiders through the rooms of my house. Dreaming that my older son is younger than my younger son. Dreaming that I mistakenly married my junior prom date. And when I wake up, I am shocked and what the hell time? 13. 2 weeks ago, I wrote my first accident sonnet. It was the day the Yahoos stormed the Capitol and our future felt dead, and my son was watching, of all things, Coriolanus on TV. And Lord, how do we acquaint ourselves with terror? And then yesterday, one president was airlifted into oblivion and the other got to sit down at the big desk and start erasing evil. And I was too afraid to watch in case something exploded. But the only thing that exploded was relief. I felt like a milkweed pod. I felt like a busted dam. 14, accidental hymn. And here I am again, praise singing, hot cornbread, and the poems of Keats, and the blisters on my hands, the ones that sprout after a day spent shoveling semi-frozen April soil, because I am so ecstatic about spring, about the shriek of the crested woodpecker dancing from tree to tree, about the radish seeds I'm dropping into the wet black earth, about our planet rolling so swiftly on its axis. And now the man I've adored for 30 years is getting out of his pickup after a long day of hammering. And here I am again, running up to him and crying, "The crocuses are up." And here he is, laughing, saying, "Show me." Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dawn. That was great. What a powerful night of readings. Oh my God, all of you, just wonderful. Thank you so much. Can we give them another round of applause?